This is serial, not episodic. Over the past few videos, I've been really diving into what makes a fight tick. Here, I'll be putting the most important lessons to use on some of anime's greatest fights. I'll be using the 2 tactical counters to analyze some of the most popular fights in the battle genre. The 2 tactical counters is something I discovered in my video on how to write strategic fights. The summary is that writing a good tactical fight requires the loser to have an overarching tactic that is countered by the winner through finding a weak point or adapting to it. As long as there is one tactic that is logically defeated by one counter, the fight is tactically sound. However, I expect these fights to be more complex in the amount of tactics and counters. Let's begin. In Naruto vs. Pain, the enemy's overarching tactic is to overwhelm the hero with their 6 fighters. Naruto's overarching tactic is to kill them off one by one. He kills Ashura, Preda, Human, and Animal with different micro-tactics, and then there were 2. Naruto revives Preda to counter one of Naruto's effective micro-tactics. Pain's overarching tactic becomes absorb Naruto's chakra with Preda. The Toad Sage uses a smart micro-tactic to counter Preda, but Deva stops the attack with his ultimate move. This move was on a cooldown due to being used before the fight started. This cooldown will be important. None of that mattered because Naruto's true target was Naraka, taking the Necromancer out of the picture, preventing them from reviving anyone else. And then there were 2 again. The Pains restrain Naruto, but he uses a clever counter to kill Preda, who was absorbing his chakra, destroying their tactic. And then there was 1. Fukasaku, Hinata, and the 6 Tails happen, but there isn't any strategy until Naruto calms down. Now, Naruto's overarching tactic is to exploit the cooldown of Pain's ultimate move. There are multiple micro-tactics on both sides, but Pain is able to use his move, so Naruto adapts to it by having his clones push him forward, allowing a final jutsu to kill the defenseless Deva path. This fight was full of amazing micros, but is still brilliant just looking at the big picture. Both sides were forced to come up with different overarching tactics that showed how skilled both of them were. The way Preda's absorption and Deva's ultimate move were countered was phenomenal. Gojo vs. Sukuna starts in 223. Gojo starts with his ultimate move and is tanked, but the fight only gets serious in 225, where they start expanding domains. Sukuna's overarching tactic is that the details of his domain overpower Gojo's domain. For the second clash, Gojo adapts his domain's details, and this actually works for a while, but Sukuna exposes a weak point in Gojo's domain and destroys it again. Gojo makes a third domain and adapts his details again. This final adaptation puts the 2 domains on even footing, and Sukuna was unable to use his adaptation from the second clash. 229 has the 4th domain clash. When their domains are now equal, Gojo is the better fighter, which is why he starts winning. In the 5th domain, Gojo is about to win the fight because his sure hit landed, but Sukuna literally adapts with Maharaga. In 230, Sukuna's new overarching tactic is to have Maharaga adapt to Gojo's signature moves, nullifying them. Neither fighter is able to use domains again. They fight on even footing for a few chapters before Gojo gets the advantage again. Sukuna adapts by using 10 shadows, including Maharaga and Agito. Maharaga is slowly adapting to Gojo, so the greatest sorcerer decides to bring out his ultimate move, which has been on cooldown since the start of the fight. In 235, Gojo is able to activate Hollow Purple, nearly ending the fight, but in the next chapter, all of Maharaga's adapting gave Sukuna a new ultimate move that allowed him to kill Gojo. I've had my issues with this fight, but when I zoom out and look at the macro tactics and whether it follows the 2 types of counters, it's actually really good. It does a wonderful job at showing how great both fighters are by having them both have to counter each other. A lot of fights only have the hero countering the villain because the villain is stronger. Here, they are both even. The multiple attempts of Gojo trying to counter Sukuna's domain were great and showed how difficult the fight was, with Sukuna countering the counters. The way the fight is split into 2 phases of tactics, domain versus domain and Maharaga versus infinity, is a great way to make the fight not repetitive while being long. I still have my problems with the specifics of the micro tactics, but from a macro scale, it's a great fight. In Ichigo vs. Byakuya, the 2 start off on equal footing, but that ends when the latter uses Bankai. His ability is too much for Ichigo to handle, so Ichigo counters with his own Bankai, giving him the speed to keep up with the Cherry Blossom blades. Byakuya adapts by using his Bankai's true form and taking advantage of Ichigo's weak point. His Bankai inexperience was slowing his body down. Hollow Ichigo bails him out and returns his speed and advantage, but Ichigo stops him to take back control. The fight is won by Ichigo through a full power final clash. This fight was exciting, but it wasn't on the same level as the first 2 due to a couple of reasons. The first is that Ichigo's counter to Byakuya's Bankai tactic was a new transformation. That feels convenient. A potential counter argument is that Naruto also used a new transformation to counter Pain, but the difference is that Naruto also used micro-tactics to execute his strategy. Let me put it like this. If you gave Sage Mode to Choji, he wouldn't have been able to do what Naruto did. but if you gave Tensa Zangetsu to Rukia, she would have been able to do exactly what Ichigo did. The second weak point is Hollow Ichigo countering Ichigo's weak point. Once again, convenient and not set up well enough. The third weak point is the final clash. There were no tactics, just all their remaining power put into one last attack. This is still easily one of the best fights in Bleach. Josuke vs Kira starts with the two just throwing hands. Without any powers, Josuke is stronger, so Kira has to bring out tactics. Killer Queen's air bomb. This takes Okuyasu out of the fight. Josuke uses some micro tactics to adapt to it, but Kira adapts to those adaptations, forcing Josuke to devise another plan. One of Josuke's prior adaptations was exposing a weak spot, Kira's no detonation zone, but that didn't work. Josuke adapts to the air bomb tactic with his homing bullet tactic. Due to a micro strategy he used before, he marked Kira with his powers to use a homing bullet for later, but for now, he has to hide and create distance to ensure that it'll work. Kira adapts to this distance by having his father tell him where the heroes are, so that he can use his air bomb from a distance. There are micro tactics used, but what's important is that Josuke adapts to this by finding the father and tricking Killer Queen into killing him. During this time, Josuke lands 2 homing bullets on Kira using his powers. The first is when he doesn't know the bullet can change directions. The second is right after he realizes that he killed his dad. In their final confrontation, Josuke's superior fighting skills are countered by Stray Cat's air wall, but this is countered by Okuyasu returning to the fight and using his powers to destroy the air bombs and capture Stray Cat. Once again, this fight has both sides countering each other's tactics. Once again, there are great micro tactics, but the macro tactics shine even brighter. The air bomb was a great combination of established powers. I love how Josuke tried multiple counters before settling on bullets. It shows how clever both sides were. The homing bullet was a creative use of his powers, and the sniping skills he trained for. The multi-step plan required for it to land was fantastic. In Kenshin vs Shishio, the latter is given 3 special moves. Move 1 is the Flaming Sword, which is created by igniting human fat on his sword. This distracts opponents and allows the flames to increase his attack range. Move 2 is the Explosion, which is made by igniting the gunpowder on his gloves. Move 3 is a bigger fire sword, but the details don't really matter, and you'll see why. On the surface, it would seem like countering these 3 moves with weak points or adaptations would be the key to victory. At the start of the fight, Kenshin is losing to move 1, but by chapter 138, he has countered it by blocking the attack with his bare hand. That doesn't make any sense. This manga has never been one to make the act of blocking blades with hands possible. Kenshin lands an attack, but Shishio attacks back and then brings out move 2, knocking out Kenshin. The fight goes into a revolving door of supporters, and all of these exchanges are won by Shishio being Shishio. He blocks Gatotsu with a metal headband, and then dodges it because he's Shishio. He tanks Futaya no Kiwami because he's Shishio. He stops Aoshi's special move because he's Shishio. Kenshin finally gets back up in 140. The pacifist actually exploits a weak point in move 2 by knocking the gauntlet into the blade early, causing the explosion to hit Shishio instead. Finally, there's move 3 in 143, but instead of finding a weak point or adapting, Kenshin just uses his own special move at the same time, preventing move 3 from even swinging. So move 1 is illogically stopped, move 2 is properly countered, and move 3 is stopped before it can even be used. The idea of having 3 tactics that the hero needs to counter before winning was a great idea, it just wasn't executed well. In Sasuke vs Deidara, the Akatsuki's micro tactic is to bomb Sasuke. Sasuke blocks the first bomb with a snake meat shield. His initial macro tactic was to surprise the duo with speed, but this becomes impossible when Deidara takes flight with C2 and starts fighting from range. While Deidara executes his tactic in multiple smaller ways, Sasuke's macro tactic is understanding his opponent's jutsu. Through 2 micro tactics, he's able to find the bomb's weak point, lightning style. It deactivates them due to an elemental advantage. With another micro tactic, he takes down C2, but Deidara survives and executes another version of his overarching strategy through C4. The Uchiha evades it and surprises Deidara with a genjutsu, but the latter had experience fighting another Uchiha, so he's able to predict this and trap him in another C4. Sasuke countered this one with the creative use of lightning style. Once again, he fooled the bomber into thinking he exploded with genjutsu, allowing him to land a surprise attack. Deidara tries 2 more bombs. The first is deactivated with lightning. The second is countered by Sasuke using a giant snake as a meat shield and teleporting to the summoning dimension, ending the battle how he started. This fight is a little similar to Kenshin vs Shishio. Deidara has 1 macro tactic, but is executed in multiple unique bombs. Sasuke's macro tactic was countering the earth style bombs with lightning style, but the fight didn't end once he figured that out, because of the different bombs. That's a smart way to extend the fight. The phases of the battle are marked by Sasuke defeating a specific bomb, and Deidara using a new one. Shishio's fight was also marked by countering each of his special moves. This also makes Deidara look very competent, because even though his opponent countered his macro, he still came up with different ways to make that beaten strategy effective. I like how the battle ends the way it started, but my only problem is Sasuke having enough chakra to summon Manda. when he clearly was worn out at the end of the fight. Jotaro vs Dio starts with the two sizing each other up, but then Dio unleashes his overarching tactic, kill Jotaro in stopped time. Jotaro's overarching tactic is to bait Dio into getting close, so that he can land a surprise attack. This is an adaptation to time stop. He also has the unforeseen ability to move within stop time for a second. He lands a blow with the magnet trick. Dio responds with knives. Jotaro adapts with the books and plays dead, allowing him to land another blow, critically wounding his opponent. Dio tries some micro tactics to escape and attack, but Jotaro counters them all. Dio gains a power-up by taking Joseph's blood, extending his time stop. This allows him to dominate the fight, but Jotaro escapes death by awakening the power to stop time as well. After Jotaro takes the advantage, Dio tries one last dirty trick, but Jotaro is able to overpower him. I used to dislike some of the conveniently introduced elements of the fight, but now I see that they're usually balanced. When Dio introduces time stop to the fight, Jotaro introduces the ability to move and stop time. When Dio introduces knives, Jotaro introduces books. When Dio upgrades his time stop ability, Jotaro upgrades his ability to move and stop time. It's not the best writing, but Jotaro was able to move and stop time the very first time Dio used it on him, so his eventual awakening of time stop didn't come out of thin air. It just wasn't set up as well as I'd like it to be. Overall, I like how Jotaro is the underdog, using cunning adaptations to keep up with his opponent. This is probably Jotaro at his smartest. In conclusion, one overarching tactic can have multiple mini-tactics within it, like Deidara or Josuke. If their tactic is defeated, having them find ways to make it still useful makes the character look resourceful. Having a fighter try multiple different micro-tactics makes them look intelligent, like Gojo. Having both fighters adapt to each other puts them on even footing and shows how tactical both fighters are, like Naruto vs Pain. Longer fights can be split into phases based on what overarching tactics the characters are using, like Gojo vs Sukuna. They can also be split into phases based on the micro-tactics or abilities that are slowly being revealed, like Shishio and Deidara. Big plays be set up through multiple smaller steps, like Josuke and Sasuke. Keep reading, Uberarians.